Okay, this video tutorial covers sections 4.2 and 4.3 of chapter 4. If you will go ahead on and get your copy of the working papers opened and go to page 102 in your textbook, we're going to start with page 102 and we're going to start in the journal tab. Notice at the bottom of your screen you have a journal tab and a general ledgers tab. In the general ledgers tab, you have a list of accounts, a list of all of your individual accounts headed in your general ledgers. Now let's go back to the journal tab. In the journal tab is your general journal. Okay. Now in the general journal you have a list of journalized accounts. And for section 4.2, we're going to post separate amounts. Let me explain to you what separate amounts are. Separate amounts are any amounts written or journalized in the general column. Any amounts journalized in the general column. If it is journalized in the general column, then there is a corresponding account written in the account title column. Okay? Now, notice 4.3 deals only with column totals. When we are looking at column totals and posting from the journal to the ledger, we're only going to look at the sales credit total, the cash debit total, cash credit total. We will get to that in just a few moments, but I want you to understand the difference between the two. Separate amounts are located in the general column of the journal. Column totals will be your sales column total and your cash debit and credit column totals. Okay. All right, let's get started with 4.2, posting separate amounts to a general ledger. The first account that we have in the journal is Omar Bohe Capital. So it is dated April the 1st and there's an amount $2,500 and it is a credit in the general. So we will go to the general ledgers tab. We will look for the capital account. And notice that your accounts are in order of your accounting equation. Assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. So all of your first accounts are asset accounts, and it starts with your liability account coming afterward, which is accounts payable. And after accounts payable, you have your owner's equity accounts, capital, drawing, sales, and expense. Okay? That's the order of your ledgers. Your ledgers will always appear in the order of the accounting equation. Assets, liabilities, owner's equity. Now, let's find the capital account, Mr. Bohe. And the date is April the 1st. Notice that the month is in there for you. However, you're going to have to record the day, April the 1st. And remember that the post reference section is always the page number of your journal. When we go back to the journal tab and look at our page number, the page number is 1. And that is going to always be the posting reference section of the general ledger. So you'll put 1 there. There's a $2,500 credit entry, and this was taken from your journal. Every entry has to have its own balance. So each time you enter something on the line or post an amount on the line of the ledger, you have to have a balance for that specific posting entry. Okay, now since this is the first entry, there's nothing to add to or subtract from, then the balance as of April the 1st for Omar Bohe Capital is $2,500. When you're done with that, you will take the account number of your ledger and record it in the posting reference section of the account that you just posted. That account number was 310. Now we move on to the next one. Prepaid insurance on the 3rd has a $330 debit balance. Prepaid insurance on the 3rd has a $330. That's the 3rd post reference section, $330 debit. And now it has a $330 debit balance. We will post the account number of prepaid insurance to the post reference section of your journal. Okay, now supplies. Supplies on the 4th, $160 debit balance. Supplies on the 4th has a $160 debit balance. Notice we put the 4th in. Post reference is the page number of the journal. That's number 1, $160 debit balance. And we're going to transfer that balance over. $160 debit entry and $160 debit balance. Record the account number in the post reference section of the journal. And it's going to be 130. We're moving on to the next account, which is accounts payable ready supply. Now, accounts payable ready supply has a $160 credit balance, and it's still dated the 4th. So let's find the AP ready supplies and record that $160 credit on the 4th. And here it is. The date is the 4th. Post reference section is page 1 of the journal. $160 credit. And we have a $160 credit balance. That is our only entry. Therefore, that's our balance. Record 210, the account number, in the posting reference section of your journal. Notice that our next row has a check mark. We never do anything with that. So you skip it. You go to the next account here. Now, I will explain that. This check mark signifies that special amount columns were used for this transaction. Those special amount columns will be sales and cash. That's exactly what that means. So our next account that we will post is going to be accounts receivable Dan Carroll in the amount of $122 debit, and it's on the 9th. So we're looking for accounts receivable, 122 on the 9th. So there's the 9th. We have page 1 of a journal, $122 debit entry, and $122 debit balance. Record the account number and the posting reference section of the journal, which should be right here. Okay. Account number is going to be 120. This section should have had a check mark in it. So I'm going to put a check mark here. Yours may already have it in there, but it was missing on mine, so I'm going to add it. Now let's move to this next section, which is rent expense. So what I just did was I noticed that there was no check mark in the posting reference section where the check mark was here, and there should have been. On your copy, I'm certain that it is there. Okay. All right. Now for rent expense, let's move on to the next one, which is rent expense. So rent expense has a $260 debit balance on the 12th. So let's find rent expense. It's going to be at the bottom. And it is the 12th. Page 1 of a journal. $260. And then we're going to have a debit balance of $260. We want to take 510 and put it right here in the post reference section for rent expense. Next account is accounts payable ready supply. It's on the 15th and it's an $80 debit. So accounts payable ready supply is on the 15th. Post reference section is page 1 of a journal. $80 debit. Now let's pause. Here we have a previous entry which has a credit balance. We just entered an $80 entry. $80 entry. So we will subtract 160 minus 180 gives us 80 bucks. We put that 80 on the side of the larger number, and since 160 is larger than 80, it will go on the credit side. You go back to your journal and record the page, the account number for accounts payable 210. Our next account is accounts receivable Dan Carroll, which is the 16th. It has a $65 credit entry. So on the 16th, we have a $65 credit entry. There's page 1 of a journal and the post reference. $65 credit entry. We do our math. So here we have a previous balance of a debit a credit entry. So we have to say 122 minus 65. We put it on the side with the larger number. Since the debit is the larger number, your balance is going to be $57. 122 minus 65 is 57. So we'll take the 120 account number, place it in the posting reference section of your journal for that specific entry, and we'll go to our last account in our journal, which is Omar Bohe Drawing. On the 25th, we have a balance from the general ledger of $500, and we're going to make that entry on the 25th. The drawing account, put the 25th in. Post reference of this general ledger is page 1 of the journal. $500 debit entry and a $500 debit balance. And we want to record that account number 320 in the posting reference section. All right, so we are finished posting separate amounts. Okay, now let's move on to 4.3, and you can turn to page 111 in your textbook, read your instructions underneath your accounts there, and it will tell you to post your column totals to the general ledgers. Now, we only have 2 special amount columns that we will be posting those totals for. That's sales and cash. Keep in mind, we've already posted everything from this column. Every single thing. We've already posted it from the general column. So we don't have to worry about looking at that column anymore. These check marks under the totals for the general column signify that the totals were not posted. They were the totals were not posted. Separate amounts or individual amounts were posted. Okay? Notice the date for totals is the 30th. That is the date that we will use to post the column totals for sales credit and cash debit credit. So let's do sales first, since we get to sales first in the journal. Sales has a $447 total on the 30th. So let's find sales. Put the 30th in. Remember, it comes from page 1 of a journal. $447 credit. And it's going to have a balance of $447. Okay, now let's go back to the journal. Underneath the $447, you'll put the account number for sales. Notice the account number for sales was 410. So, well, why are we putting it underneath? Because we are posting the totals. That's why. So we want to make sure that that is in parentheses. So you'll open your parentheses and let's put 410 in. Okay, now let's move on to cash. The cash debit is $28.90. Let's find cash. It's at the top. The date is the 30th. Still comes from page 1 of a journal. And we have a debit entry of $28.90. We have a debit balance of $28.90. Now we want to go back and put the account number for cash debit right under that column. You want to put it in parentheses. Okay. Now notice that a negative sign was for this one. Now, anytime you use parentheses in Excel, it will turn it into a negative number because parentheses means negative. If it does that, that's totally okay. Don't worry about that. I will know that you did use parentheses. This was formatted differently, this column was, and that is why it did not do that, okay? Now, I can show you how, so let me show you. I can show you how to format it so that it will not put the negative sign. All you do is put the apostrophe in, okay? And then just put it in parentheses, and it will not put it in there for you, okay? Just put it in. The apostrophe forces Excel to recognize a number as though it was a word. That's all it does. So let's move on to the cash credit column. Cash credit column has a total of $1,170 on the 30th. So the cash credit column on the 30th, notice that I have to make a separate entry. I cannot forget that date when I am making another entry. It's coming from page 1 of a journal. It's $1,170 credit, and you have a debit balance and a credit entry, so you have to do the math, okay? So I'm going to do the math inside of Excel. I'm going to put the equal sign in, and I'm going to put in 2890 minus 1170, and that is my balance. So I have a $1,720 balance on April the 30th for the account cash. Go back and put 110 under the total there. And I'm going to put my apostrophe in to force Excel to recognize this as a word and not a number. And now my parentheses, they're showing we are done. That is all you do for this section. There's a lot to cover, a lot to remember. Watch this as many times as you need to make sure you understand posting separate amounts. All of that comes from the general column, and posting column totals will only be taken from the totals for sales credit, for the cash debit, and cash credit columns. When you are finished with this, proceed to do the 4-2 and 4-3 working together.